Hello, I'm Dr. Jean Cirillo, and today we're going to talk about a subject that's very dear to my heart. We're going to talk about bullying. I'm a practicing psychologist in New York on Long Island, and in my years of practice, I've seen quite a bit of bullying. And yes, it does have long-term negative effects. There are people who were bullied when they were kids that still remember it as if it was happening today. And there might be some situations where somebody doesn't, but studies have shown that kids who are bullied are 4 times as likely to grow up with some kind of anxiety disorder, depression. Often kids who were the bullies don't outgrow it, but they turn out to be having criminal problems later on in life. So bullying is a very serious issue. I think it's actually gotten better in the past 10 years because there's been a lot of media attention, and that can make people think that there's a lot more bullying. Actually, with the schools starting all the anti-bullying program and parents getting involved, and most importantly, kids and teenagers realizing that bullying is not cool. That's the important thing. It used to be that often the kid who was the bully was the one who could make a lot of friends. If you were a victim of bullying, it wasn't dealt with properly. It was just that you can't take it, you have to learn to deal with it. All the onus was put on the victim. And now I don't see that to be the case. I think what's happening is parents and schools and kids themselves who are bystanders are getting involved in telling the bully to quit. And that is helping. One thing I recommend for parents and teachers is if your child is being bullied, it's important that you don't do what you might instinctively want to do, which would be, if you're a parent, say to take away the phone, if they're getting bullying texts, or to take them off the social media site, or to take away their computer. And that's not a good thing to do because it makes the victim victimized twice. Think about it. Normally losing your phone, your computer, or the privilege to go outside, even having your seat changed on the bus, is seen as a form of punishment for a child. What should happen is the kid who's doing the bullying should lose the computer privileges, the phone privileges. Hopefully parents and teachers will carry this out. On the school, I always say if there's a kid being bullied, don't change their seat. Change the seat of the kid who's doing the bullying. That might seem like a small thing, but to a child who's in the middle of the experience, it's important. Because what it is an acknowledgement. Often you don't suffer so much from the bad things that happened to you when you were a kid. Now looking at studies of extreme physical abuse or sexual abuse, the abuse is bad. But what's even worse is that sometimes if and when you do try to talk about it, or if you're afraid to go to anybody about it, it's because of lack of acknowledgement. You feel either that someone's going to blame you, you're going to be punished, you're going to be seen as bad, or they're just going to discard it and not do anything. And now I see a very positive change in parents and schools in the way they are dealing with it. Of course, it hasn't completely stopped all the bullying. You know, there was a case of somebody in a college just recently committing suicide because he was being bullied with a webcam. The people in the room next to him were taking photos of him. He was in there with another guy, and they bullied him for being gay. Again, that's a form of being different, where, let's say, 10, 20 years ago, a college might not have done anything. They might have said it's the kid's fault, that somebody was just playing a prank and he couldn't take it. Well, this prank led to him feeling so bad, he did a very inappropriate thing. Instead of going to somebody in authority, he committed suicide. He did that because he felt the same way someone might feel with long-term physical or sexual abuse, like nobody cares. So there are cases. There's also cases where even if a kid has the right mental attitude, sometimes the bullying does cause physical harm. There were a bunch of 10 and 11-year-olds in upstate New York who ganged up on a boy and punched him and pushed his head into a wall, and it turned out he got a concussion and 9 days later died from the effects. Now, that's not something that usually happens, but why should it happen at all? These kids didn't mean to kill him or hurt him seriously, but that's what happened, and it not only ruined his life, it ended it at a very young age, it also ruined their lives, because now it's taken seriously by adults, and kids who do a lot of physical harm to someone else are tried as adults, as they should be. So that's a positive change that I have noticed, that bullying is taken seriously. It's not the cool thing. If you find that your child is being bullied, the best thing to do is, if it's through text or social media or the cyberbullying, get a hold of the messages, download them, and if you have to, keep them around to show to the police or to the authorities so that there's some physical evidence behind you, and it's not just your word or your child's word against the other ones. The other thing to do, if your child feels comfortable, sometimes it's somebody you know, often it's not who you expect, it's a friend who's jealous, or a friend who even thought they were playing a prank, even if you don't see it as funny when you don't know where it's coming from, to confront the person and say, look, I don't appreciate it, you're bullying me, could you stop it? And to let them know you take it pretty seriously. Now, if it's someone who is really dangerous or who your child feels is dangerous, you as a parent can report it to authorities, to the school or outside the school, and they do now have to take some action if you or your child are afraid that some harm is going to come to them from this person. Another thing to do is on social media sites, let's say like Facebook, friend your child. It's much more difficult for anybody to leave dirty language or nasty messages or threats or ridicule if they know that there is an adult on the site. Even a dangerous predator who goes after children is going to look first to see if there's an adult, and if they see a parent there, bullies, predators are usually pretty cowardly. They pick on the easiest victim who doesn't seem to have anybody behind them. So if you're your child's friend on Facebook or Instagram, or you're following them on Twitter, they're much less likely to be the victim of anything on the site. I would also demand to know your child's password. You're not going to go into their account all the time, but that can get you to the private messages that friends can't get. This way you can see if there are secret threats being sent to them. Check the groups page if your child's name's up there. If anybody has an I hate so-and-so group, that's a trend on Facebook that isn't too nice. You can click off report this group. If it's one person or a group of people, you can click off report this person or this person. It will be done anonymously, and the penalties will come from whoever it is that's in charge of the website, just as it now comes from school administrators rather than the parents and the child always having to fight back, which can be very draining and very unfair and scary. Also, your child won't be pegged because chances are people who like to bully quite a few people. So your child isn't the only victim, even if you don't know of any others. Often, if this person is reported, they're doing it or they have done it to someone else. And in that sense, if your child's a victim, it's your responsibility. One thing to tell kids when they are being bullied is to make friends. If they can't make a group of friends, even if they just have one friend, a bully or even a gang of bullies is much less likely to pick on a child and their buddy than to pick on a child alone, where there's no witness and there doesn't seem to be anybody behind them. Another thing that you have to tell them to do is try to stay close to adults. They're a lot safer, say, in a classroom or in a public place where there are a lot of adults around, as compared with, say, in the woods where a gang of bullies think they can get them and not be seen. Another thing is the school bus is a pretty difficult place. If you can survive on a school bus, I rode one for 8 years, you can survive anywhere. It's hard because the bus driver has to drive the bus and can't stop all the time, and often there are no other adults on the bus. So this is something you might want to consider letting the authorities know, and this is where they'll give the bully, hopefully, an assigned seat. Let that concern be known. And if you have to, you might want to take your child off the bus, even if it's an inconvenient. Never put the child in a situation where it's just them feeling like they either have to do what the bully wants or stand up to the bully. Never let them be afraid to tell you. Often a child who comes home who suddenly their grades are dropping, they seem to lose their gang of friends, or they come home with torn clothes, or they're asking for money because somebody's taking money from them. Whatever it is, if they're showing signs that something's different, it might be that they're being bullied. And they have to feel that you're not going to react as bad as they do, that you're going to be behind them. Now, if anybody wants to contact me, certainly you can email me through my website. It's drjean.tv. That's drjean.tv. And certainly you can ask me any questions. I'm always willing to answer them. And I hope that this speech on bullying has been helpful for you and the people in your life.